Coach, I don't know if you addressed it post game or not, but can you give us a couple examples, maybe what Postma brings, what he's done to earn that spot, the starting quarterback, what he brings maybe a little bit differently from a skill set?
Well, he did some things, Saturday that were impressive in terms of obviously running with the ball, extending some plays. Gave you some options in terms of running the football. Not that Kyle Allen can't, but he did a great job of taking care of the ball. There's a couple instances in there, as there usually are with most quarterbacks, even the great ones like Brady. There's always one or two throws in there that are kind of, whoa, let's rethink that. But did a great job of putting his eyes in the right place, taking care of the ball. Ending drives with kicks is what we just talked about offensively, staying out of our own way, and then just a different factor in terms of as a ball carrier. When plays break down and people aren't wide open or they're covered, or you can actually get involved in some quarterback run game.
I know you've said you're evaluating every position, but is this a job that you want Postman to keep based on his history with the team and how hard he works? And just, is this something that, like I said, do you want him to keep the job?
Yeah, I want whoever's playing the best to play. And it's nothing, there's nothing personal involved with it. I want production at every position, and I want it deep. It's a long season, and you're seeing already with some injuries that some guys have to step up. So regardless of what position it is, we want the best players to produce, want our best players on the field, and those are the ones that produce.
Major, with the quarterbacks, as you move forward, regardless of who's there, do they fit schematically, or do you feel like you have to change things, whether it's Allen or Postma or De'Eric, or do you feel like you can keep a sense of normalcy, or at least keep things pretty close to the same thing if all three of them are in there?
It's much more close in terms of in years past. If you watch us, there's such a diversion from whether it was Adam Schultz or whether it was Kyle Postma coming in for Greg Ward. That was more two different worlds. This is a little bit more similar, believe it or not. So, and just as an offensive coach, defensive coach, special teams, whatever it is, you're going to build your scheme around your personnel and what they can do. If this guy's not a good puller, then you're only going to pull to your left. If this guy doesn't have great speed, then he needs to run routes underneath. If this guy can't cover people very well, then he needs to have a safety over the top of him and help. So all positions are looked at that way, and just kind of how we try to scheme things as coaches.
Major, is Postma the quarterback now going forward, or is it a week-to-week thing?
It's week to week with every position. Every position. We've got to try out for kicker because we can't kick the ball out of bounds. So every position is wide open, and it's not coach speak. It's every position is wide open week in and week out. You commit penalties on special teams, we find guys to come in for you. Playing time, nobody's entitled to playing time. We've got to earn it as coaches. We've got to earn it as players, and it's not any harder line stance than anybody else would have as a coach. You produce, you do good things on the field, you play, and we're going to evaluate every position every week.
How has Kyle Allen handled this situation?
Great. Great. We've got really, really good kids in our players, young men in our program, and they handle things the right way. They understand it. I think the number one key factor to that is open and honest communication, and that's one thing that we pride ourselves in as a program, whether it's player to coach or coach to player. You can always be upfront and honest and tell us exactly what it is, and we'll handle it. And I may not like it as a coach, you may not like it as a player, but we're always going to be on the same page and not have any miscommunication.
Major, along those lines, what are the pros and cons? For instance, I think if I recall when we were in Arizona, Kyle Allen told us that he really was never told. It was just go out there for that game. And then Kyle Postma told us on Saturday that he found out over breakfast. Is there because of the importance of that position to have the guy know ahead of time, to have your offense know, so that there's I don't want to say chemistry, but just so guys know who's essentially running the show, or does that not really factor in your mind when making a decision?
Yeah, every quarterback was brought in on Tuesday. We talked to him on Tuesday and said the quarterback who takes care of the football the best, quarterback who has his eyes in the right place most of the time, and the quarterback who has control of his huddle and moves the football will start. and we'll make that decision at the end of the week of practice. And so when Friday night came along at the hotel, I wanted those guys to sleep well, not worry about anything, not have anything in the back of their head. I also didn't want things coming out on Friday night where opponents can start to scheme or start to think and talk about things at night or early in the morning. So then we brought all the quarterbacks together Saturday morning, explained to them that all three of them have done great things for this program. At quarterback and at wide receiver, both De'Eric and Kyle Postma. Kyle Allen's won 2 games as a starter, completed 90% of his passes in a game. Kyle Postma, and then Kyle Postma, you've come in and won games in 2015, played and started a game and won it in 2016. Y'all have all done great things for the program. This is what we're going to do for the football team. Kyle Allen, be ready. It's the same thing I told Kyle Postma, half an hour before the Arizona game, be ready. It's just like any other position. I understand it's quarterback. I get the attention that it gets, the media, the clicks, the likes, whatever. But it's like any other position. You've got to be ready to go, period. The same way Emil Fleming had to be ready to go.
So is it more strategic then? Is it more strategic that you maybe you have an idea and you watch practice develop, but let's just not tip your hand. I mean, is that kind of the way you would see this thing going forward, or would you like for a guy to say, hey, you're my starter week 5, and as long as you don't mess up, I mean, you're the guy moving forward, or is this again going to be a week to week?
It's going to be consistent evaluation of the quarterback position. I don't know how to phrase it the right way, I guess. We're going to continue to evaluate it the same way we are every position. And as long as you're producing, you're taking care of the football, moving the football team, and your eyes are in the right place, then you're going to play. And that's just what we're going to do with the quarterback position. Same thing if you're a right guard. As long as you're continuing to keep your guy off the running back and the quarterback and not committing penalties, you're going to continue to play. So we're going to continue to evaluate that position week in and week out the same way we do every other one.
Major, do you have an update on Ed Oliver?
What I've been told right now is MCL sprain. A lot of that, there's degrees 1, 2, 3. I don't know if there's 4 and a 5, but he's got an MCL sprain. He had something very similar to this last year, from what I understand. He wore a brace and was able to play. So it's just kind of day to day in terms of how he feels. Once he gets the brace on, he starts becoming more active with it. So we'll have to evaluate that throughout the week.
Kind of a game time decision. Would you see that?
Yeah, right now, because he was a little sore on it yesterday, and we're not out there in full pads on a Sunday. There was a little bit of let's let it calm down. No practice today, so then today being our off day, we'll have to be able to see what he does when he gets out there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and just evaluate it.
Major, what's the approach with the wide receivers? And I'm sure you will probably word your answer carefully, but the approach with the receivers as far as early pass interference calls against them, and how do you guys approach that with them in terms of keep playing the way you're playing? Maybe the calls will turn the other way?
Yeah, well, there's a new emphasis this year and across the board in college football on offensive pass interference. 2 of the 4 that we've had this season, we've had 4 in 4 games, and 2 of the 4 I don't disagree with. I mean, you just can't, and they've both been in the end zone, both been with the same player, and there's just things that you can't do. And when you are a big guy like that, you're going to get attention out there. And so those 2, the other 2, one was about 4 or 5 yards out of bounds. The ball was thrown. We all make mistakes, and I think probably had they looked back at it, they'd say, hey, that thing wasn't catchable. And then the second or third play of the game, I've sent that into the league, and they've been really good about getting back to me because I just want to know how to teach them. I didn't see the pass interference on Keith Corbin. I thought he made a great play on the ball. But I want to just be able to go back and talk to the wide receiver group and say, hey, listen, these 2 we absolutely deserve. This one, the guy probably missed it. The ball hit the punting net out of bounds. Now, this is the one that they're saying still is a pass interference, even though we don't necessarily see it. This is how they're interpreting that rule, and this is how they're enforcing that rule.
Major, I want to ask you about Emil Fleming, and just kind of going back, looking at the film, what you saw from him and coming in when Ed left the game.
Yeah, I mean, in general, they had a great plan for us in a certain front. They came out in the second half. I think they had 8 yards rushing at halftime and had 130 in the second half. So they did some great things to our front. Emil, There were some times where he made some great plays, but he was also just kind of getting his feet wet in terms of what to expect down in and down out. You know, he's got to play, and he's got to play well, and that's for any backup. You know, when your number's called, it's time to show up.
Major, what's the message you have for the team going into Week 6, going against a pretty good team that's kind of a lot different than last year? They're pretty good on offense and defense. What's the message you have for the team, and what are you guys going to be focusing on this week?
It's our normal week preparation, you know, in terms of play by play, period by period, practice by practice, focus on the here and the now. You know, we're not getting into these conference games coming down the line. We're certainly not looking past anybody. You know, you give this opponent the same amount of respect we've given all of our other opponents leading up to this point. Tremendous amount of respect for them. Defensively, they've got some guys that have come back in the secondary, some guys that have come back at the linebacking core. They have experience at all three levels of their defense. They can take the football away. They'll give you a lot of different looks, a lot of different blitzes. Offensively, they're averaging around 500 yards a game, 200 on the ground, 300 in the air. They've got, you know, a great wide receiver, you know, outside that's got a lot of publicity and is a really good football player. I mean, really good draft type player. But they've also got some other great wide receivers. You know, Prochet, Quinn. They got a couple guys that are averaging 26 yards a catch, so they're very explosive. The quarterback is good. He understands where to get the football, can extend some plays, and then their backs. Their backs are tough, shifty guys that are hard to tackle. So they're very explosive on offense, and they're a very good football team. But in terms of our preparation, nothing's really going to change in terms of what we do, you know, week to week and how we study, and how we prepare our minds and our body for the game.